This decision isn't just reckless, it's reprehensible.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul slammed the U.S. Supreme Court Thursday after it declared for the first time that the Constitution protects an individual's right to carry a handgun in public for self-defense, handing a landmark victory to gun rights advocates in a nation deeply divided over how to address gun violence. The 6-3 ruling from the conservative majority court struck down New York's limits on carrying concealed handguns outside the home, finding that the law, enacted in 1913, violated a person's right to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment. Governor Hochul called the ruling absolutely shocking.
Does everyone understand what a concealed weapon means? That you have no forewarning, that someone can hide a weapon on them and go into our subways, go into our grocery stores like stores up in Buffalo, New York, where I'm from, go into a school in Parkland or Uvalde. And I'm sorry this dark day has come. That we're supposed to go back to what was in place since 1788 when the Constitution of the United States of America was ratified. And I would like to point out to the Supreme Court justices that the only weapons at the time were muskets. I'm prepared to go back to muskets.
The NRA called the decision a watershed win as it represents the court's most important statement on gun rights in more than a decade. But it comes as support is growing nationally for more gun control after a series of mass shootings, with Congress on the verge of passing the first gun legislation in decades. Warren Eller from John Jay College of Criminal Justice said, despite alarm that the ruling could lead to more gun violence, he expects the impact to be limited.
We still have a plethora of tools available to us to be able to regulate firearms and the possession of firearms in public in the state of New York, and more specifically in the city. So I think while this is it's a big decision, and it's going to be a big decision with big impacts in California and New Jersey, I don't think it's either going to be as immediate as people are concerned with or as dramatic as people are concerned with.
The ruling will affect at least 6 states and the District of Columbia. Authored by Justice Clarence Thomas, the ruling does acknowledge that states can prohibit guns in sensitive places. And in a concurring opinion, conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh said states can still impose rules for people seeking licenses to carry, including fingerprinting, background checks, mental health checks, and firearms training classes. President Joe Biden condemned the decision, saying, quote, "This ruling contradicts both common sense and the Constitution, and should deeply trouble us all."
U.S. stocks finished higher Thursday after another choppy session as Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell testified before Congress for a second day, and as investors weighed the risk of more interest rate hikes tipping the economy into recession. The Dow rose 0.6%, the S&P 500 finished about 1% higher, while the Nasdaq gained more than 1.5%. Ryan Bellinger is managing principal and founder of Claro Advisors.
You've got people fleshing out the comments from Fed Chairman Powell, trying to figure out if he's going to be more dovish or hawkish. And I think people are just settling in on what the future might look like. And you've got the quarterly rebalance happening tomorrow for a lot of the indices. So that's going to create a lot of buying and selling in both directions.
Energy stocks slumped again, continuing their recent pullback after soundly outperforming the market for most of 2022, but not Occidental Petroleum, which rose after Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway bought another 9.6 million shares of the oil company. Tech heavyweights Microsoft and Apple each rose more than 2%, lifting the S&P 500, and defensive stocks considered safer bets in times of uncertainty were among the top-performing sectors Thursday, with utility stocks, consumer staples, and healthcare all posting big gains.
Тільки що отримали кандидатство. Це перемога.
We have just received candidacy. It is a victory. We have been waiting for 30 years and 120 days. And then we can defeat the enemy and we can rest. Or should we first restore Ukraine and only then rest? Maybe defeat restore, join the EU, and then we will finally be resting. Or perhaps we won't rest at all. But no, our children would take offense. But without any doubt, we will win.
Діти образяться. Але точно переможемо.
President Trump rushed back early from Mar-a-Lago on December 31st and called an emergency meeting with the department's leadership. Here's Mr. Donahue describing the last-minute meeting held at the White House on New Year's Eve.
The president was a little more agitated than he had been in the meeting on the 15th. There was a point at which the president said something about, why don't you guys seize machines?
Mr. Rosen, the president asked you to seize voting machines from state governments. What was your response to that request?
We had seen nothing improper with regard to the voting machines, and I told them that the real experts at that had been at DHS, and they had briefed us that they had looked at it and that there was nothing wrong with the voting machines. And so that was not something that was appropriate to do.
There would be no factual basis to seize machines. Mr. Donahue,
I don't think there was legal authority either.
Yeah, Mr. Donahue, can you explain what the president did after he was told that the Justice Department would not seize voting machines?
The president was very agitated by the acting attorney general's response, and to the extent that machines and the technology was being discussed, the acting attorney general said that the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, has expertise in machines and certifying them and making sure that the states are operating them properly. And since DHS had been mentioned, the president yelled out to his secretary, get Ken Cuccinelli on the phone. And she did in very short order.
Mr. Rosa, did you ever tell the president that the Department of Homeland Security could seize voting machines?
No, certainly not.
Mr. Donahue, during this meeting, did the president tell you that he would remove you and Mr. Rosen because you weren't declaring there was election fraud?
Toward the end of the meeting, the president, again, was getting very agitated, and he said, people tell me I should just get rid of both of you. I should just remove you and make a change in leadership, put Jeff Clark in, maybe something will finally get done. And I responded, as I think I had earlier in the December 27th call, Mr. President, you should have the leadership that you want, but understand, the United States Justice Department functions on facts, evidence, and law, and those are not going to change. So you can have whatever leadership you want, but the department's position is not going to change.
After enduring years of war, a truce is breathing new life into Yemen's capital. Old Sana'a is being rebuilt as part of a large-scale restoration effort led by UNESCO. Many of its historic buildings were damaged by bombing. Those working on them, like architect Zayed Al-Khulani, say their restoration is no easy feat.
We are dealing with historical buildings that are between 300 and 350 years old, and each house is unique in its historical and architectural style.
Sana'a and northern Yemen have faced thousands of airstrikes since 2015, during a 7-year conflict between the Saudi-backed military coalition and the Iran-aligned Houthi movement. Many thousands have died, but a truce was brokered by the United Nations in April. Officials say 5,000 buildings were damaged during the course of the war, including 380 that are on the brink of collapse. Mohammed Jume is the Yemen ambassador to UNESCO.
During the wartime, unfortunately, people are focusing on the war, and even the news which comes out of Yemen are about war. Now we need to give some hope. It's important regarding safeguarding, protecting, renovating the cultural site of sites of in Yemen.
The restoration is also giving jobs to Yemenis. More than 4,000 are working on the project. Family homes are next on the list.